Friends from the press, good morning. Welcome to the press conference for the second session of the 13th NPC. The theme of this press conference is the legislation of the NPC. We have invited today Mr. Chen Xiwen, the Chairman of Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee of NPC, Vice Chairperson of Financial and Economic Affairs Committee of NPC, Mr. Ritu, Vice Chairperson of Legislative Affairs Committee of NPC, Mr. Junchen, and Anbiao, also Vice Chairperson of the Legislative Affairs Committee of NPC, and Mr. Cheng Lifeng, member of the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Committee of NPC. Now the floor is open for questions.
谢谢主持人。法制日报全媒体记者，我们想问一个关于立法工作的问题。我们关注到现在全面依法治国已经进入到一个新的时期，那么人民群众对我们立法工作也有很多新的期待，但是呢，一些新的问题也不断出现，比如说像基因编辑，还有某些网站会自动推荐一些低俗信息，包括像自动驾驶等等，所以立法工程也都很高。所以我们想请问一下，对于这种新的问题、新的现象，那么我们作为国家的最高立法机关，在这个新的时期会怎么样进一步加强和改善我们的立法工作？谢谢。
With Legal Daily, as we enter a new era to further advance the law-based governance, people have higher expectation of the legislation. Moreover, some new issues such as the gene editing, unmanned driving, and sending online messages in violation of regulations have posed new challenges to the legislative work. In face of these new trends, what efforts will the NPC Standing Committee make to improve the legislative work in the new era? Thank you.
好，我来回答你这个问题。谢谢你的提问。昨天啊，我们和大家一样，聆听了栗战书委员长的工作报告。
As you all, we have listened to the report of Mr. Li Zhanshu. The chairman has made a report on the performance of the NPC over the last year. Over the past year, under the leadership of the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, the legislation and supervision of the NPC Standing Committee has made a lot of progress, especially progress for the legislation. We have made 8 new laws and modified 47 laws. And we have made important decisions for 9 important laws. We have also made a comparison. For each changes of the generation of the Standing Committee, our current session is the most fruitful one as to the lawmaking. Currently, in our socialist legislative system, we have 271 laws effective, and we are improving that system too. The Standing Committee of NPC is supervising the work. Meanwhile, for this session of legislation, we have made the general planning. After the investigation and collection of ideas, we have elaborated a 5-year plan. According to that plan, we have proposed 116 items of lawmaking, among which 48 are new ones, and another 68 laws will be modified. There are 2 categories of them. First of all, In the range of this current duty, we should accelerate our work and try to deliberate on 69 laws. Secondly, we have to try our best to accomplish the modification and deliberation on another 47 laws. And third category, for those laws not able to be established, we should accelerate our investigation and studies. Now we have already proposed all those tasks, and we have to follow the guidance of the Xi Jinping thoughts on socialism with Chinese characteristics in a new era. At a higher level, we have to provide better quality of legislation so that we can improve the socialist legislative system with Chinese characteristics, and we have to continue to apply the major decisions of the NPC Central Committee. We have to be problem-oriented and know what is the key priorities. This is the guiding principle for our legislation work. As you have mentioned, for our legislators, we are facing new challenges. We have to improve our work in a new era. When we are doing the 5-year plan of legislation, we have made in-depth studies on that topic. First of all, we have to uphold the unified direction by the CPC Central Committee in the legislative work so that we are always moving towards a correct direction. Second, legislation should be in a match with the reform and opening up. Legislation should help to promote the socio-economic development. And third, legislation should always put people's interests at heart. More legislative results should bring more benefits to the people. And fourth, we have to be guided by the correct and good socialist values. The socialist values should be incorporated into the legislations. And fifth, we have to do the legislation in a democratic and scientific way. And the lawmaking should also be based on the Constitution. Sixth, by the creation, modification, and elimination of the laws, we are using multiple measures to turn our legislation more completed and coordinated. And seventh, based on Constitution, we will make our system of legislation better, and we have to protect the authority of the Constitution of the country. Those are the ways to help us to improve the socialist legislative system. But the plan is only the beginning. We have to continue with real actions. And the NPC has also organized a meeting on the promotion of legislation work. Mr. Li Zhanshu has proposed the measures and also the instructions to promote the legislation work in the new era. And we have to apply the new idea of Mr. Xi Jinping about the rule of law in the country. And this rule of law will be a guiding principle in our legislation work. The NPC Standing Committee should play a leading role in the legislation work, and it should shoulder up its responsibility and accelerate the pace of the legislation, and step by step we can improve the quality of our work. Thank you. Next question, please.
谢谢主持人，凤凰卫视提问。问题想请教陈希文先生。去年12月，全国人大常委会完成了《农村土地承包法》的修法。那么当前的重点会有哪些？我们也关注到当中设定了这个农地的经营权，什么时候会扩展到农村的建设用地？那么在流转的范围内，是否会突破农户所在的集体的限制，甚至是城乡的限制？另外还有个特别关注的小问题，想请教刘俊成先生。昨天报告说，房地产税法呢会稳步推进这个立法工作。那么想问有没有具体的时间表？是否是本届必须完成的？谢谢。
With Phoenix TV, my first question goes to Mr. Chen Xiwen. In December last year, the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, the NPC, amended the law on land contract in rural areas. What was the focus of the amendment? And my second question is about the right to land contractual management. When will this right be applied to construction lands in rural areas? And will the circulation of the right go beyond the boundary between collective groups or even beyond the boundary between rural and urban areas? I've also got a question to Mr. Liu about the property tax law. It is said that the property tax law will be steadily advanced. I want to know if there is an exact timeline to follow and when will be the earliest date for deliberation. Thank you.
好，谢谢你的提问。我回答一下你提的第一个问题。
Thank you
就
for your
是
question.
我国农村啊，现在还有2亿多农民，
I
农
will
民
give
的
the
家
answer
庭
to your first
承包
question.
的
In China's countryside, there are
所以这个农村土
200
地承包法
million
呢，是一部关系亿万农民切身利益的法。
farmers' household.
那么去年年底呢，全国人大
So this law about the land contracting is closely connected to their
这次修改呢，
interests and rights. Last December, we have adopted that law about the land contracting. There are 3 points. First of all, it's been 40 years that we have reformed the countryside and its land system. And today we have the industrialization and urbanization. The situation is changing. More people in the countryside, they become the migrant workers. In this case, more rights of operation on the land have been transferred to the other families.
And in light of this situation, it is necessary that we give some new legal arrangements about the land. And also in light of the requirements of the rural residents, the Standing Committee of the Communist Party has put forward a number of requirements. For example, we need to guarantee and return the rights of the land and guarantee that the residents have the operational rights. And there should be a separation of the rights for ownership and operation. So this is the second requirement. And thirdly, over the years, the rural residents, they have encountered some new problems. Different localities have their own approaches in solving these problems, and these new experiences will be supplemented to our lawmaking efforts, and they will be elevated first to the level of policies and then to the level of law. And one of the most important parts of these amendments is that we have put into consideration the separation of ownership rights and operation rights. And now the law features a separation of 3 rights. The residents can use the operational rights by themselves, and they can also transfer such operating rights to others. And after that, the traditional contracting relationship between the residents and the collective group does not change, which means that the residents still enjoys the operational rights entrusted to them from the collective group. And this is the new requirement and the new amendment. And this not only helps guarantee the original operating rights of the residents for the land and also guarantees their ownership rights. And this is very conducive in promoting the skill development of agriculture, and it will also promote the modern agriculture development. You may also notice that there are two very particular questions. The first is that we have to stabilize the contracting relationship. And this is well stipulated in law so that people can be rest assured. And also according to the amended law, when the second contracting term becomes due, the term would be extended by another 30 years, and this is clearly stipulated in the law. And this is giving a lot of confidence to the farmers. According to General Secretary Xi Jinping, in the 19th CPC Congress, we extended the term by another 30 minutes, which means that it will be around the middle of this century. And by that time, we will complete the task of building ourselves into a modern socialist country. And by that time, we will also encounter new problems, and according to General Secretary Xi Jinping, and by that time, we will research into the agricultural policy again. But before 2050, I think the farmers, they can be rest assured that their rights will not be changed, and their rights are protected with registration and with the protection of the amended law. And after this term becomes due, it will be extended by another 30 years, and this is very important. Another very important key point of the law is that all the localities are advancing in terms of modernization, and there are a lot of farmers who are becoming urban citizens. And what happens to their land rights when they become urban dwellers? Well, according to this law, we do not request the farmers to withdraw from the contracting and operating rights of the land. Well, this is clearly stipulated by law. And according to our amended law, we encourage the farmers to either voluntarily withdraw or transfer their rights to a third party. This is very important to our farmers so that they are more independent, they have a lot of free options, and they can reduce their worries when they become urban citizens. So these are the key points, but we have more to share with you. And at present, what is very important is that our farmers must be aware of these amendments. In particular, after the transfer of the land, there will be some new conditions or situations. For example, can I further transfer the land to others since I'm renting this land? And also, can I obtain the operating rights of the land since the land is rented? Of course, there are very clear legal stipulations. And when we transfer the land to others, or when we claim a bank loan using the land as the mortgage, then you need to have the written consent of the original right holder. And this in itself is a very important guarantee for the rights of the original operating rights holder. And this is included in the law, and we have to publicize this law. And in the meantime, we have to step up with our efforts in the registration of the land rights. And according to relevant information, by the end of this year, the land rights registration work will be basically completed. And thirdly, we have to come up with some additional legal arrangements and policies. For example, after obtaining the written consent of the original rights holder, then the current operator of the land can claim a bank loan using the land as the mortgage. And in this aspect, we need to come up with a more detailed systems and arrangements. The next is that we have to conduct further research about how to define the starting time of the second term of the lease. As we have mentioned that when a term becomes due, it will be extended by another 30 years, and we have to come up with the details about how to translate this arrangement into reality. There are also questions. For example, can I engage in some construction work on the land that I lease? And I think this is well answered by the law already. And when the land is leased, it can only be used for agricultural purposes. And there is very strict processes guiding the use of the land, so we do not support the transfer of the land for construction or engineering purposes. The leased land can only be used for agricultural purposes. As long as you are following this regulation, then it is supported, and we have to make sure that all the land obtained for construction purposes are obtained in a legal process. And we encourage all legal land to come into the market, but they have to be legally obtained for legal purposes. And we have approved the land transfer law, and there are already some stipulations, and we have to wait and see how the reality develops and decide whether it is possible for the transferred land from rural areas to come onto the land market. Thank you very much, Mr. Chen.
好的，谢谢主持人，我是新京报的记者。财经立法呢非常重要，那么管好老百姓的钱袋子，提升政府的治理能力，具体高质量发展都离不开财经立法的保障。请问按照立法规划的要求，目前财经立法的进展如何？那么对此，财经委将推出什么样的举措？具体到今年，财经委将制定和修改哪些重要的财经法律？谢谢。
With the Beijing news, the financial and economic legislation is very important, as it is the foundation to improve governance, achieve high-quality development, and make good use of the money in people's pocket. Can you share with us the progress of financial and economic legislation? Are there any new measures from the Financial and Economic Committee? And also, what major financial and economic laws will be formulated or revised this year? Thank you.
请吴主任回答。
Hand it over to Mr. Wu, please. Thank you very much to all the journalists, and good morning. It's a great pleasure for me to sit down with friends from the media to share with you our legislative work over the year at the Financial and Economic Affairs Committee of the NPC. According to the legislative plan of the Standing Committee of the 13th NPC, as Mr. Xu has mentioned just now, among the 116 planning pieces, 36 of them were undertaken by the Financial and Economic Affairs Committee, or led by the Financial and Economic Affairs Committee to play a liaison role between different ministries. And last year we have formulated the e-commerce law. We also coordinated and approved the individual income tax and vehicle purchase tax law, and also registered tax law. And these four laws, they have been approved by the Standing Committee and they have been put into place. And also the Financial and Economic Affairs Committee has formulated the urban construction law, and we also formulated the resource tax law and the foreign investment law. And these three laws, they are currently being approved, being reviewed by the Standing Committee. And for the remaining 29 legislative pieces, we are currently working on them, and so you can see that we have a very heavy legislative burden, and our committee has been learning the new thoughts and new ideologies and new strategies put forward by President Xi Jinping in terms of socialist legislation, and we are exploring what are the new requirements of the new era, and we are also exploring new policies and new mechanisms. And let me share with you two of our efforts. The first is to implement the arrangement and strategies of the Party Central Committee. According to the request of the Standing Committee, the Financial and Economic Affairs Committee has put forward the opinions regarding improving the socialist legislation in the field of financial and economic affairs. We have put forward the plans of advancing macro control measures, expanding foreign openness, and strengthening property protection. And we have put forward relevant suggestions and opinions regarding the improvements of legislation. For example, in light of the extended openness of our country, the committee last year has advanced the work of foreign investment law, and we have accelerated the pace of legal review. As you might know, that yesterday afternoon we submitted the law to the NPC. In the meantime, we are advancing the export management law and other foreign trade-related law. While improving relevant laws, we are also accelerating the tax law and audit law. These laws are currently being amended, and we are accelerating our pace in defining the basis of these laws. The Financial and Economic Affairs Committee is also accelerating the amendments of securities law and stock-related law, and we are also advancing the marine safety law, civil and military combination law, and in the meantime, we are playing a leading role as a legislator.
First, according to the lawmaking legislation, our committee, starting by this year, will carry out evaluation on the effective laws about the finance and economic development. This year, to start, we will choose first 5 laws: the railway law, enterprise bankruptcy law, quality of product law, and the law on the promotion of SMEs, and the laws on the bidding. We will do the automatic evaluation and evaluation by the others or by third party. By the pilot program, we can draw a lot of experience, and finally, this will become an important step in the legislation. And then the result of the evaluation would help us to do better with the creation, amendment, and elimination of the laws. And second, for the NPC should have an early intervention and improve the mechanism of the lawmaking. In the past, we were very passive, but today, we should be more active in the communication with the relevant departments. For those items included into the 5-year plan, we should set up a management plan. We should know clearly the timetable and also the items, the tasks, and the responsibilities. We should distinguish the items and distribute them to the different seasons of work. So we can get to know the difficulties and challenges in real time, and also urge the relevant departments to accelerate their work, and finally, we can complete our mission according to the timetable. Ladies and gentlemen, legislation and lawmaking is not only the responsibility of our committee, but also that of the whole society. We'd like to listen to the opinions and advices of people of all walks of life. I'd like to thank you for your support to the work of our committee, and we hope that you could continue to follow up with our work. Thank you. Next question, please.
谢谢主持人。中国国际电视台 CGTN 提问，我的问题呢是给我们环资委的程立峰委员的。我们都知道环境方面的立法呢，一直以来是我们全国人大常委会立法工作的一个重中之重。那么有一部法律呢，大家都是非常关注，那就是《长江保护法》。我知道它已经纳入到了2019年的全国人大立法工作的计划当中。那么这两天呢，我跟一些委员代表跟他们讨论，他们也非常关注这部法律的立法进程，并且提出了一些意见。那么想请问您的就是，目前这部法律的立法工作如何？然后，因为它确实涉及到了很多比较复杂的问题，那么您觉得最大的挑战有哪几个方面？谢谢。
With CGTN, my question goes to Mr. Cheng Lifeng. We all know that environmental legislation remains one of the priorities of the legislative work of the National People's Congress, and a law on Yangtze River protection has been included into the Standing Committee's legislative plan in 2019. Could you share with us the latest progress of the protection law, and are there any obstacles? Thank you.
谢谢您的提问。
Thank you for your question. In the Legislative Plan 2019 of the NPC Standing Committee, our committee is responsible for 15 laws. We are applying diligently the plans of the Central Committee of the CPC, and we are also applying the directions and instructions of Mr. Li Zhanshu. We are doing active studies and early intervention. We are leading the work for the context studies of the feasibilities and the other work. You have mentioned the law on the protection of the Yangtze River. That is a law proposed and also initiated by our committee. General Secretary Xi Jinping has closely followed the work relevant to the Yangtze River. He has proposed a priority on ecosystem and also the protection of the environment, and we should avoid the large scale of construction. He has made important instructions on the protection of Yangtze River, and we are following the instructions of Mr. Xi Jinping and his decisions. The law on the protection of Yangtze River is inside the Legislative Plan 2019, and it belongs to the Category 1. And it is also one of the tasks for the legislation of the NPC Standing Committee. Our Environmental Protection Committee is responsible for the drafting of this law. General Secretary Xi Jinping has paid a large attention to the lawmaking about the protection of Yangtze River. And it is said that the early studies and the drafting of the law for the protection of the Yangtze River should be completed in an early date. And we are following closely the directions of the state leaders. Over the past 1 year, we have accomplished the following work. First, we have started the investigations, organized the seminars, and collect the advices and suggestions of all people. We have been to Shanghai, Chongqing, Hubei, Guangdong, Qinghai, and other places to do the in-field visits. For the different sections of the Yangtze River, we have studied the situation of 19 regions and provinces along the Yangtze River. We have listened to the opinions of the people coming from the local governments and local People's Congress from these 19 regions and provinces. We have also invited the law enforcement personnel, experts, and scholars to listen to their opinions. In Beijing, we have also organized the rounds of seminars, and we have convened the members of the State Council so that we are familiar with their points of view on this subject. For the timetable and the application, we have made the down-to-earth actions. We have worked together with the other relevant departments to form a leading group for the lawmaking for the protection of the Yangtze River. We have set up a working plan. We are clear with the guidelines, cooperation mechanism, cooperation responsibilities, and also the timetable and the roadmap for the protection of the Yangtze River. We have organized the first meeting for the leading group, and we have studied the decisions of General Secretary Xi Jinping concerning the development of the Yangtze River Economic Belt. And we have adopted the work plan about the lawmaking for the protection of Yangtze River. And third, we have started the drafting of the law for all the units affiliated to this leading group. They have sent people and representatives to the drafting work. On the basis of the wide collection of opinions, we have accelerated the drafting of this law. We're trying our best to complete the work in time so that we can submit it to the NPC's deliberation. Thank you. Next question, please.
谢谢主持人。中国外文局中国网记者提问：我们想请问，为什么要制定关于外商投资的专门法律？那么，如果这部法律获得通过，将会给境外投资者带来哪些好处？谢谢。
With China.com.cn, my question is about the law on foreign investment. Why is there a special law on foreign investment? And once this law is adopted, what benefits can be expected for foreign investors? Thank you.
好，我来回答这个问题。我先补充回答一个问题。
I'd like to answer this question. First of all, I'd like to give an answer to another question, because there's a journalist asking about the real estate property law. Yesterday, in the work on the performance of the NPC Standing Committee, Mr. Li Zhanshu has made the instructions. According to the legislative plan of the NPC Standing Committee, relevant departments are drafting the law on the real estate property, and we are progressing on that subject. That is the answer to the previous question. And for this question about the law on foreign investment, why this special law for the foreign investors? Yesterday, Mr. Wang Chen has already explained to us the details about this law. This is a very detailed presentation. 40 years after the beginning of the reform and opening up, we have embraced the new spring, and we are studying the adoption of this new law for foreign investment. This shows our strong determination to open the country even wider. Legislation would be the best business environment. At the beginning of reform and opening up, we have made a law for the introduction of the foreign investment, but several decades have passed now. That previous law for the foreign investment is no longer suitable for today's circumstances. In order to adapt the legal system to the business environment, we have to elaborate and formulate a new law on foreign investment. It is a necessity to deepen the reform and opening up, and also the way to follow the instructions of the CPC Central Committee to improve the foreign investment management mechanism. That is the background of the lawmaking. According to the new requirements, to make a new law to replace the old law for the foreign investment, we are sure that it will play the role of consolidation and its promotion and realization of our expectations. We can have several angles to look at this subject. First of all, the positioning of this law. As is mentioned by Chen, the law on foreign investment is the fundamental law for the foreign investment. What does it mean by fundamental law? So it is a kind of guideline. This law would set up the basic framework, rules, and standards for the foreign investment in China. And next, it can help us to set up the structure for the future laws to come to benefit the foreign investors in China. So today, we are making all those laws to improve the environment, to stabilize people's expectations, and set up a transparent and ensuring environment for the foreign investment. And second, for the contents, for this law on the foreign investment, for the national treatment, the negative list, and the permit of access, the national treatment mentioned in the international community, it's after the access. But today, what we are talking about is the permit before access. When they have the access, apart from the requirements in the negative list, for all the other areas, they can have the treatment, national treatment. It is also mentioned in the draft for the access period, they can enjoy the national treatment.
Which means that the national treatment is advanced to the period of before entry. And this is the second important point. And number three, from the purpose of the legislation, we can see that from the perspective of the main tone of the legislation, the foreign investment law is aimed at better protection. So this is actually a foreign investment protection law or foreign investment protection promotion law, and this is actually promoting foreign investment, and this is the fundamental characteristic of this law. In light of these problems existing in foreign investment, this law has stipulated many different articles. For example, we emphasize that foreign investment policies must be made open and transparent, and foreign investors can participate in market economy of China on an equal basis. To give you just one example, when a local government is formulating a foreign investment-related policy, then according to this law, you can formulate a policy that facilitates foreign investment. And secondly, you need to follow the required procedure. And third, you need to adopt certain standards. All these are stipulated in this law, and so it can be expected that the new foreign investment law will bring a lot of benefit to foreign investors, and it will be very conducive for China's opening up and reform. It will further China's reform. Thank you.
谢谢主持人，我是新华社记者。 近年来呢，就是去南极旅游的人越来越多了，相信也给这个南极的环境保护带来更多的挑战。我们听说13届全国人大常委会已经把南极活动与环境保护法列入了立法规划，所以想请问这个立法的重点和难点在哪？谢谢。
With Xinhua News Agency. Now, Antarctica tourism is growing into a new fashion, and the increase of visitors is imposing a new challenge to protecting the environment in the Antarctica. As we all know, the law on Antarctic activities and environment protection has been included in the legislative plan of the 13th NPC Standing Committee. So what are the focus and difficulties of the legislation? Thank you.
我来回答这个问题。首先还是谢谢。
Well, let me answer your question. First, thank you very much for paying attention to the environment-related legislation, and I hope that in the future you can continue to follow our work at the 13th NPC Standing Committee. In particular, the environmental-related legislation, and the CPC Central Committee attaches great importance to the environment in Antarctic. He has clearly pointed out that we need to better understand, better utilize, and protect the Antarctic. The NPC Standing Committee has been implementing the arrangement of the CPC Central Committee, and we have included protection of the Antarctic into our legislative work at the 13th NPC Standing Committee, and currently the law is being drafted at our committee, and we are a very important country in the protection of the Antarctic. With the constant development of tourism in Antarctic, we are required to some extent to transform the protection of Antarctic into our domestic legal system. We need to standardize certain behaviors and improve our capacity building in this regard so that we can advance the protection of the Antarctic in a steady manner. And the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Committee of the NPC is carefully implementing certain efforts, and we are accelerating the drafting process, and we will complete the drafting of the law, and we will submit the law to the NPC for review. Thank you.
谢谢主持人，我是财新周刊财新网记者。我想提问给人大财经委副主任乌日图先生。主任您好，我们注意到昨天的那个人大常委会工作报告强调，今年要落实税收法定原则。那么我想请问您，1年来，落实税收法定原则取得了哪些进展？现在距离2020年完成税收法定原则只有不到2年的时间，今年有哪些具体的措施来推进这项改革？尤其我们要注意到，在那个常委会的工作报告中提出，今年要集中力量来制定房地产税法，大家都非常关注这一项立法。我想请问您，这项立法的基本思路和框架是什么？草案要什么时候提交审议？谢谢。
With Caixin, yesterday we noticed that in the NPC Standing Committee work report, the implementation of the statutory taxation was emphasized. What have been the progress over the last year in implementing the principle of statutory taxation? And also, as there are only less than 2 years left to the year 2020, the deadline set for completing the statutory taxation task, what measure will be taken this year? In particular, with regard to the property tax law, the area of great public interest, what will be the basic principle and framework of the property tax law, and when will be the date for the draft to be submitted for deliberation? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. To implement the principle of statutory taxation is a major work at our committee. The so-called statutory taxation means that all the taxes must be law-based. According to such requirements, new taxes must be based on law that is passed by the NPC at various committees. For existing for existing tax-related laws, they must be amended and they must be further elevated to the law level. As of present, the Standing Committee of the NPC has formulated the environment tax law, tobacco tax law, shipping tax law, and cropland tax law, vehicle purchase tax law. We have amended the corporate income tax law and individual income tax law. In the meantime, we have conducted the initial deliberation about the resource tax law. In the next step, the Financial and Economic Affairs Committee will follow the plan of the annual legislative work, and we will urge relevant authorities to come up with the VAT law, property tax law, custom tax law, urban construction tax law, stamp tax law, and taxation law. In the meantime, we will complete the initial deliberation on the draft law so that we can complete the legislative task on time. You have further asked the question of property tax law, and my colleague Mr. Liu has well answered this question. According to the requirements of the CPC Central Committee, the property tax law is undertaken by the Budgetary Committee of the NPC and the Finance Ministry of China. At present, relevant authorities, they are accelerating their pace in drafting the law, and they are also carrying out major workshops and researches about the law. And when the conditions become mature, and we will present the law.
与改革密切相关的法律决定。那么，请问，立法是如何保障推进全面深化改革的？谢谢。
With CCTV, we all know that over the last year, the NPC Standing Committee adopted many laws and decisions that are closely related to reform. How does legislation help to advance reforms across the board? Thank you.
好，我来回答你的问题，谢谢你的提问。去年呢是改革开放40周年，改革开放40年来
，Last year marks the 40th anniversary of China's reform and open up. And over the years, legislation has grown in line with China's opening up. And in China, the relationship has been somewhat different at different times. And at the beginning of the opening up, the legislation mainly reflects the achievements of reform and opening up. And with the development of China's social and economic, society and economy, and we are entering into a phase that almost every area needs to have a law. And over the years, we have adhered to the principle that all major issues must be law-based, and legislation must be made compatible to our reform. And we have to improve our legislation in a process of reform, and we also need to reform in a process of the legislative developments. And since the establishment of the 13th NPC Standing Committee, and we have long been upholding this principle, which is supporting and guaranteeing reform with legislation. So number one, we are including major reform issues in our legislation, and for example, all these affairs related to deepening reform, they are included in our legislative work, and wherever there is a request, there will be a deliberation of the drafting law. And for the legislative work, the amendments, abandoning, and the draft of the law, they must all be deliberated. And the second aspect of our work is that we have to amend the law when the time is mature. Wherever the law is feasible, we need to carefully and review the law. We need to carefully review the law on a timely basis. And for example, last year, we have amended the civil servants law. The civil servants law has consolidated the achievements of administrative levels of the civil servants. And also the legislation law is a summary of our achievements of the legislative reform. And also the land rights law is also a summary of the achievements we have made in land operational and ownership rights. And we also have the rural jury law. And thirdly, through delegation and entrusting of our efforts, we also supported reform. For some of the reform matters, the legislative time is not mature, but we need to advance the reform. So in this case, the NPC Standing Committee will entrust relevant committees to legislate a law, and we can formulate the policy and pilot this policy at certain location and localities. And when the time becomes mature, we're going to elevate that policy into a law. And as we have mentioned, that over the year we have 30 pieces of legislation, and last year the NPC Standing Committee has engaged in the deliberation about the administrative authorities, and we also have deliberated the decision made by the State Council regarding maritime and shipping safety. And before the law is amended, we play a role of seamless coordination.
Fourth, for those single certain of law amendment, we will invite the legislative organs to discuss on it. Sometimes we don't have to abandon the whole law just to correct or modify some parts of it. For the similar problems or the similar paragraphs, we will do the amendment altogether. At the same time, we will accelerate the legislative process, and we will do it once for all. Last year, the NPC Standing Committee has deliberated and adopted the amended 47 laws, among which 40 of them are completed by this. For example, the law on the protection of wildlife, along with other 15 laws, and also the inspections on the health and situation. Those are the laws completed in this way, so that we can and make sure that the progress is on the track. Thank you. Next question, please.
新闻记者提问，我的问题是关于民法典，因为民法典的编撰关系着每一个人。民法典各分编是从去年开始进入到全国人大常委会审议的程序，其中包括广受关注的婚姻家庭篇。今年两会的时候，有全国人大代表建议提出，有关夫妻债务共债共签的问题，应该在民法典的修订中有所体现。那么，法工委是如何考虑这些建议的？民法典其他分编的进展又是什么样的程度？谢谢。
With Chengdu Economic Daily, my question is about the compilation of the Civil Code. Since last year, the separate parts of the Civil Code started to enter the deliberation process in the NPC Standing Committee. Among others, the part on marriage and family is of great public interest. There were suggestions from the NPC deputies that the issue of matrimonial debt should be taken into account in the revision of the Civil Code. So how does the Legislative Affairs Commission evaluate these suggestions, and what are the latest developments of other parts of the Civil Code? Thank you.
刘主任，我来回答这个问题。感谢你对
Mr. Liu, please.
这个民法典呢
Thank you for your attention to the Civil Code. The Civil Code is like the encyclopedia of the life of the people. It is also the code of conduct related to each single person's daily life and also the life of each family. A civil code and its amendment constitute an important task given by the central government. It is an enriched code. A lot of things are related. For the elaboration, there are two steps of work. First of all, we have to publish the general principles of the Civil Code. That work is completed by March 2017, setting a solid foundation for the Civil Code. And next step, second step, is to accomplish each separated parts of the Civil Code. Based on the published Civil Code general principles and all the separated chapters, we put them together to form this Civil Code. In the end, according to our working plan, we are about to submit to it to the deliberation of the third session of the 13th NPC that will take place by March 2020. So our work is on the track, is progressing very steadily. Next thing, last year by August, the Civil Code separated chapters, we have united them together and submit to the NPC Standing Committee for the first review. So the first review has completed for all the chapters. Then there will be a second round of review. In that case, we are about to divide it into different units, and we are going to do that review respectively on each sections. For example, the rights, violated rights, and also the other parts would be submitted first to the deliberation of the NPC Standing Committee. That is the ongoing progress. And then for the formulation of the Civil Code, because it's closely connected to all the families and people in the society, we have made our door wide open to collect as many opinions as possible. For example, last year, we have set up on the internet to listen to the people. We have received 437,000 opinions, and many of them are already accepted. For those issues of interest and most popular issues among the people, and also the hot topics, we have made the responses. For example, you have mentioned the matrimonial debt. In recent years, in the public opinions, there have been a lot of discussions, and based on that matrimonial debt, a lot of conflicts have taken place. And today we are doing the explanations by the legislative departments. People are paying attention to those issues, like the matrimonial debt. And also, in some cases, when you are going to participate in one sport voluntarily, but then you got hurt, how can we divide the responsibilities? And also some other barbarian conducts in the public places or in the public transport. What could we do with those problems? All those questions are related to people's daily life, and for us, we are going to follow the guideline of a scientific lawmaking and also continue with the amendment of the civil code, and we are about to finish that work in time. Thank you. Next question, please.
我是人民日报社的记者。去年全国人大常委会通过了耕地占用税法。有人认为这是向种地的农民进行征税，增加了农民的负担。那么，请问，对于这种观点该怎么看？谢谢。
With People's Daily, some people are skeptical about the law passed last year on farmland occupation tax, claiming that this law imposes greater tax burden on farmers. So what is your assessment of such perspective? Thank you.
我回答一下你刚才那个问题。我觉得你刚才那个谈到的有一
Okay, it's my turn. You have mentioned this kind of thought that the farmland occupation tax is increasing the farmer's burden. Actually, it's not correct. First of all, the subject about to pay the farmland occupation tax, this means the personnel and units who have occupied the farmland to build up the other constructions. In this law about the farmland occupation tax, if you build up the infrastructure, waterworks in the farmland to facilitate the work in the farmland, it doesn't belong to the range of this task. And if you build up your own house on the farmland, then you will be taxed with 50% off. And then this law has just been adopted, but for the occupation of the farmland, we have already adopted a law for the fees collection. As mentioned by my colleagues, we are now applying the general principles of important laws. We have just passed this law on the farmland occupation taxes since last year, but that is based on the previous edition of the farmland occupation fees. So it's a kind of misunderstanding that this farmland occupation tax will increase the burden of the farmers. Next question, please.
挺火的，不知道经常往农村跑的陈希文主任是否关注？我们了解到，全国人大正牵头起草《乡村振兴促进法》，请问这部法律将如何通过立法来促进乡村振兴？谢谢。
With Southern Metropolis Daily, I don't know if Mr. Chen Xiwen has noticed that over the past 2 years, it has been quite a heated topic of seeking business opportunities or starting businesses in rural areas. We learned that the NPC is leading the drafting of a law to promote rural revitalization. May I ask how the law will help to revitalize the rural areas? Thank you.
好，谢谢你的提问。这个你刚才讲到啊，农村这个
Thank you
新
for your
产业。
question. As you have mentioned, there are new forms of businesses now in the countryside. Indeed, it's a form of rural prosperity. The Central Committee of CBC has mentioned a strategy of the rural revitalization, and the rural business is just one possibility of that. The strategy of rural revitalization comprises a good habitat, effective production, a comfortable life for the people and also the economic prosperity. After the 19th CPC Congress, as well as after the central rural work, as well as the #1 central document in 2018, we have set up this Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee of NPC, and we become the leading unit for the elaboration of this law on the rural revitalization. Our committee has carried out in-depth investigation and also reported our results of investigation to the leaders. We have also collected the opinions from the society, and we have made up our mind that it will be called a law on the promotion of rural revitalization. Under the leadership of the central government, and also based on the instructions of the General Secretary on the rural revitalization, and also based on the first 5-year plan for rural revitalization between 2018 to 2022, we have organized a lot of seminars and discussions, and for the NPC deputies and the Standing Committee members have visited dozens of regions and areas in the country to listen to the opinions of the local NPC members. And now the work is on the track, and the drafting of this law has made also a lot of progress due to the establishment of a leading group. After the conference, we're about to form the first version, and by 2019, we can have a mature one to be submitted to the deliberation of the central to the Standing Committee of NPC, and we are about to collect once again the opinions of people from all localities of the country, and then by 2020 we can have the possibility to adopt it. Now it is still in the draft form, this law, but at least I can assure you there are some parts as the following. First of all, we can apply the principles and instructions of the Central Committee about the rural revitalization application. And second, in China, we're about to continue to harmonize the relations between the urban and rural areas during the process of development to apply those important principles.
For example, the CPC Central Committee has put forward the principle of putting agriculture as a priority, and this can be reflected in the work report of the 19th CPC Congress. And we are putting 3 things in priority: education, employment, and agriculture. These are the 3 priorities of our work. How do we demonstrate this very important position of agriculture? And we have to demonstrate it with a law, and also according to the 19th CPC Congress, we have to reshape the rural and urban relationships, and we need to build a new type of urban-rural relationship. How do we demonstrate that? We have to reflect such new relationship in a law. And but in the meantime, we need to make sure that the law is made in harmony with previous and existing laws. And the third aspect that we need to demonstrate is that, as you might know, that last year we have issued the first 5-year plan regarding rural rejuvenation, which is for 2018 to 2020. After the strategy was released, different localities, they have been implementing these very important requirements. And to my knowledge, the 31 provincial governments, they have completed the formulation of the provincial level of rural rejuvenation regulations. And more than half of the municipal level governments have completed the municipal level of legislation, and 40% of the counties have also completed this very important legislation. I think this is very important for the rural rejuvenation. And in the meantime, we are stepping up our efforts at the township level. I think this is very important for the formulation of the rural rejuvenation law at the central level. So our members and our experts will conduct various inspections and investigations at different localities, and we will draw upon the experience created by the local level governments and different localities, and we will merge them into a law, and this is called the law of promotion. So the key word is promotion. As you might know, that in the process of promoting urbanization, the interest of the countryside has been sacrificed to some extent. For example, the cropland has been decreased, the environment has been deteriorated. So we need to come up with a law that protects the interest of the rural areas. For example, for some violations, that undermine our environment and deteriorate our ecological conditions, and also for some hazardous pesticides used, and we have to place a ban and put in place strong management and control for these behaviors, so that we can guarantee the livelihood and life quality of our farmers. Thank you very much. Due to time constraints, this is the end of this presser, and thank you very much to 5 members, and also thank you very much for participating in this press